Picture Alexandria in 69 BC. The sun glints off the Nile, merchants shout in the bustling markets, and scholars debate philosophy in grand halls. This was one of the most extraordinary cities in the ancient world, built by Alexander the Great himself. And here a girl is born, Cleopatra VII. Not just another royal child. Cleopatra was a force waiting to be unleashed. From the beginning, she had what would make her legendary: intelligence, ambition, and a mind sharp enough to navigate the deadly politics of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Plutarch, the Greek historian, wrote that being in her presence was irresistible. That charm wasn't just physical, it was intellect, wit, and the ability to make anyone feel important. Cleopatra wasn't only about looks or allure, though Hollywood often simplifies her story. She was cunning, educated, and multilingual, speaking 7, maybe even 8 languages, including Egyptian, which was unusual for her Greek Macedonian lineage. She studied philosophy, rhetoric, and oratory. She knew how to move, how to gesture, and how to speak so her words carried weight. She understood politics not as a game, but as survival. And in her world, survival wasn't guaranteed. The Ptolemaic family, her dynasty, had ruled Egypt for over 300 years, but their history was stained with sibling rivalries, betrayals, and murders. Cleopatra's own family was no exception. Her siblings were rivals, sometimes exiled, sometimes executed. Power was fragile, and the throne demanded cunning. By 17, Cleopatra was queen, but her rule wasn't straightforward. She shared the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, and internal tensions quickly escalated. Her vision for Egypt was one of strength, alliance, and diplomacy, but some family members had different ideas. Political maneuvering forced her into exile, and she had to gather support to reclaim her throne. This is where Julius Caesar enters the story. The Roman general, now the most powerful man in the Mediterranean, was in Egypt pursuing his ambitions. Cleopatra saw an opportunity. She didn't send envoys. She didn't wait for permission. She orchestrated one of the boldest moves in history. Cleopatra had herself smuggled into Caesar's palace, reportedly wrapped in a rug or linen sack, to meet him in secret. Can you imagine that? A young queen risking everything, sneaking into the most powerful man's chambers and instantly commanding his attention? It worked. Caesar was captivated, yes, but more importantly, Cleopatra used the moment to secure her power. With his support, she returned to Alexandria, regained her throne, and demonstrated not just beauty, but brains, strategy, and courage. Her ability to play politics, manipulate alliances, and navigate danger made her far more than a queen. She was a political mastermind. Even her enemies took note. Ptolemy XIII and his advisors had tried to consolidate power without her, but Cleopatra outmaneuvered them. The city of Alexandria, with its legendary library and cultural sophistication, became her stage. Under her reign, Egypt prospered, trade flourished, and her influence reached far beyond the Nile. Yet, Cleopatra's story wasn't only about politics. It was about survival, resilience, and the art of influence. Her life was filled with risks, family betrayals, foreign armies, and a male-dominated political world. But she consistently turned danger into opportunity. By the time she met Mark Antony later in her life, Cleopatra had already proven herself. A queen who understood that power wasn't given, it was taken, negotiated, and defended. She was more than a figure of legend. She was a ruler whose intellect, strategy, and charisma allowed her to shape history. If you want to follow Cleopatra's journey, her alliances with Rome, her battles for power, and the legendary love affairs that reshaped history, hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because the story is about to get even more epic. Cleopatra, Caesar, and the Game of Thrones. So, Cleopatra's back on the throne of Egypt, but she didn't just return to Alexandria with a crown on her head. She returned with a plan. And that plan involved the most powerful man in the Mediterranean, Julius Caesar. Imagine it, a city divided by civil war, the streets buzzing with rumors, advisors whispering in every corner, and Cleopatra striding into Caesar's presence, confident, calculating, and already several steps ahead. The stakes couldn't have been higher. One wrong move, and she could have ended up like so many of her siblings, exiled, executed, or worse. Her first priority? Secure her power. Caesar, despite being a Roman general and a conqueror, respected cleverness. Cleopatra wasn't just some foreign queen to be manipulated. She was an equal in strategy. By aligning herself with Caesar, she ensured not only her survival, but the future of Egypt. And, let's be real, she played the alliance like a master. History remembers her seduction, but the truth? Cleopatra seduced with intellect, influence, and political acumen first. Caesar was captivated, yes, but she knew exactly how to use that to her advantage. With Caesar's support, her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, was forced to back down. Cleopatra regained full control, while Ptolemy met a tragic end at the Battle of the Nile. And just like that, Cleopatra wasn't just a queen, she was a political powerhouse. Now, let's talk about Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar. Cleopatra wasn't naive, she understood the importance of legacy. Caesarion was more than a child. He was a living bridge between the greatest power in the Mediterranean and the wealthiest kingdom in Africa. His birth wasn't just celebrated, it was a statement. Egypt would continue to thrive under Cleopatra's reign, and the Roman connection was real. But the story doesn't stop there. Rome wasn't done with politics, and Cleopatra knew she had to maintain her grip. Caesar returned to Rome, leaving Cleopatra in Egypt, but their alliance had already shifted the balance of power. She wasn't just playing local politics, she was influencing the entire Mediterranean stage. Fast forward a few years, and Cleopatra's life becomes even more entangled with Roman power. Enter Mark Antony, one of Caesar's closest allies and generals. Following Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Rome was thrown into chaos. Power struggles erupted, and Cleopatra knew that if she wanted to keep Egypt strong, she needed another strategic alliance. Enter the legendary meeting in Tarsus, 41 BC. Cleopatra arrives in style. Let's paint the picture. A boat with a gilded stern, silver oars cutting through the Nile, and music playing. She steps on the shore, radiant, intelligent, and commanding. Antony doesn't stand a chance. He's captivated instantly. But Cleopatra isn't just a woman to be admired. She's a queen negotiating the survival of her empire. Every gesture, every word, every glance is calculated. Their union isn't just romance, it's a political powerhouse. Cleopatra and Antony become allies in every sense, culturally, militarily, and politically. Egypt flourishes, Alexandria thrives as a cultural hub, and Cleopatra's legend grows. But it's not all smooth sailing. Antony is married, Octavius, later Augustus, is rising in Rome, and Cleopatra has enemies on all sides. During this period, Cleopatra gives birth to twins, Helios and Selene, a symbolic union of the sun and the moon, representing her ambition, power, and legacy. Even separated from Antony, she continues to play the political game. Letters, envoys, and clever maneuvers keep her influence strong, proving that Cleopatra's genius wasn't just in the palace,
It was in the politics of empires. Of course, Rome didn't take kindly to a foreign queen meddling in its politics. Octavius saw Cleopatra as a threat. Antony's loyalty to her fueled tensions, eventually leading to the fateful confrontation at Actium in 31 BC. Cleopatra stands with Antony, navigating fleets, armies, and the fate of two empires. And when defeat looms, she makes a calculated retreat to Alexandria, maintaining composure while Antony's army faces chaos. Her brilliance? She doesn't just fight battles with swords. She fights with strategy, with psychology, and with spectacle. Cleopatra understands that perception is power. She negotiates, she maneuvers, and she continues to protect her throne. Even in moments of potential defeat, she remains one step ahead, keeping both her city and her legacy intact. By this point, it's clear, Cleopatra wasn't just a queen. She was a master strategist, a diplomat, a mother, and a ruler who understood the brutal reality of power. She turned Egypt into a cultural and political hub while navigating one of the most dangerous periods in Mediterranean history. Her story is not just about romance with Caesar or Antony, it's about survival, cunning, and shaping history in her own image.
The fall of Antony and Cleopatra, and the Queen's eternal legacy. So we're at the climax of Cleopatra's story. The year is 31 BC, and the stage is set for the Battle of Actium, one of the most pivotal moments in history. Cleopatra and Mark Antony are facing Octavius, the future Augustus, in a struggle that will decide the fate of Egypt and Rome. Imagine the tension. Thousands of soldiers and sailors, flags snapping in the wind, ships lined up in perfect formation. Antony's fleet is massive, but Octavius has the advantage: strategy, resources, and the backing of Rome's political machine. Cleopatra is there not just as Antony's lover, but as co-strategist, commanding her own squadron, ensuring Egypt's survival and keeping her throne intact. But the tides turn. Antony's forces are overwhelmed. Ships are sinking, men are falling, and chaos spreads across the Mediterranean waves. Cleopatra makes a bold and controversial decision. She retreats to Egypt with her fleet, leaving Antony to handle the battlefield chaos. Some historians call it betrayal. Others see it as pure strategic genius. Cleopatra knows she can't win on open waters, but she can preserve her kingdom and live to fight another day. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra is already planning the next move. Antony returns, battered and broken, only to find his queen safe and his city intact. Their love is legendary, but so is the weight of history on their shoulders. Antony, once a powerful Roman general, is now vulnerable, not just to Octavius, but to fate itself. Fast forward to 30 BC. Octavius is marching into Alexandria. The city braces for invasion. Cleopatra knows that the endgame is near. Antony, desperate and disheartened, receives false news of Cleopatra's death. In grief and despair, he falls on his own sword. The man who once commanded legions dies in the arms of his queen, his final breath a tragedy written in blood and love. Cleopatra is now alone, facing the most powerful man in Rome and the fall of her empire. But she refuses to bow. In a move that's as calculated as it is legendary, she prepares for her own death, not with fear, but with strategy. Historical accounts differ, but the most enduring story is that she allows herself to be bitten by an asp, a symbol of Egyptian royalty and divine power. Other accounts suggest she took a carefully prepared poison, painful yet dignified. Her death is the end of an era. The last Pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra VII, closes her eyes, not as a defeated lover,
but as a ruler who controlled her fate until the very end. Her funeral is magnificent, solemn, and entirely fitting for a queen who lived and died on her own terms. She is buried alongside Antony, as she requested, a final act of love and legacy. Now, let's step back and see what Cleopatra really achieved. People often reduce her story to romance with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, but that's a massive oversimplification. Cleopatra was a ruler, strategist, linguist, diplomat, and mother. She spoke 7 or 8 languages, navigated one of the most dangerous political landscapes in history, and kept Egypt independent during a period when Rome was swallowing nations whole. Her intelligence and charisma weren't just personal, they were tools of power. She leveraged them to protect her kingdom, her people, and her legacy. Alexandria thrived under her rule, becoming a cultural and intellectual powerhouse, a city filled with art, science, and innovation. And while Rome tried to paint her as a foreign temptress, the truth is far more impressive. Cleopatra was a political force to be reckoned with, shaping history in ways few women and few men ever have. And even after her death, Cleopatra's influence echoes through time. She inspired artists, writers, and filmmakers from Shakespeare to Hollywood epics. Her story continues to captivate the world because it's not just about beauty or romance, it's about power, strategy, and survival in a world dominated by men. And here's the kicker. Cleopatra's life is a lesson that history remembers courage, intelligence, and strategy over superficial appearances. She was underestimated, vilified, romanticized, but she remained a queen who played the long game and shaped the destiny of empires. So, as we look back at Cleopatra, Egypt's last pharaoh, Julius Caesar's lover, Mark Antony's partner, a mother and a strategist, her story reminds us of the power of intellect, resilience, and daring. She wasn't just a figure in history, she was history. If you're fascinated by stories like Cleopatra's, where history meets drama, power, and intrigue, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Dive into the lives of the greatest figures the world has ever known, and let their stories inspire your own. And remember, history isn't just about the past, it's about the lessons we carry forward. Cleopatra's courage, intelligence, and strategy continue to inspire leaders, thinkers, and dreamers.